The month of September, according to Bazi Chinese astrology, is going to be loud, proud, and center stage. So we are going to, in this video, unpack not only the Bazi Chinese astrology forecast for September 2025, but also look briefly at the flying stars Feng Shui to make sure your home is aligned for you to navigate your way through this month the best you can. Also, given that we are now in eclipse season and have a pretty potent full moon on the 7th and new moon on the 21st. So welcome. My name is Lydia Griffith. This is the Feng Shui and Bazi Chinese astrology channel. On this channel, I often read the charts of famous people because I think it helps us to better understand our own world, our world collectively, where it's going, why it's going the way it is. Certainly with political figures, that can be true, but it also helps us to understand and relate to our own astrology. So welcome again. If this is of interest to you, you're curious to know more about this different kind of astrology, please consider subscribing, liking, and hitting the bell. So welcome. Bazi astrology, I often describe as of the earth, based on the 5 elements, much like, as I say with Feng Shui, it's kind of like acupuncture for our homes. And in a similar way, Bazi astrology is acupuncture for our physical bodies and our lives. So Western astrology is the planets and the stars in the sky, and as above, so below. Together, they really give us a full picture from different lenses, kind of like looking at a crystal through the different prisms, and it gives you different ways of looking at your overall story, your karmic path for this life, this soul journey. I want to also begin by saying I am now in North Carolina. I went on a 33-day walkabout. I think I did a little bit of filming while I was on the road, and I am now landing in what is going to be my new home after 30 years of living in Virginia. And there are going to be changes to the channel. I'm thinking of renaming it, giving it a full facelift, and really taking it to the next level. This past month of the monkey, let's just start there. Because before we can even begin to move forward into what is September, we've got to compost where we've been. For many of us, the month of the monkey may have really been a challenging month. And, you know, a lot of this does depend on your own personal Bazi astrology. There are links below if you are interested in a reading with me. I've streamlined some of the readings to make it a little easier. And I will often say the hour-long reading with me often runs over. I'm terrible with time these days. What is time anyway? So when we look at where we've been, the monkey forming that semi-fire penalty with the snake, and that monkey being yang metal and the snake yang fire, certainly played with money in the stock market. And it certainly could have felt explosive as far as fighting war, Israel relaunching its mission in Gaza, you know, Russia continuing to bomb in the Ukraine, all these things. And those are just the bigger stories that we hear about. There's many, unfortunately, others. But there's also ways that bombs blow up in our lives. Suddenly things happen that we didn't see happening, whether it's a car accident or the sudden loss of your job. So lots of shifts and changes, and this is one of the reasons that my response to this penalty, knowing that I'm born in the hour of the snake, so knowing that this fire penalty was going to hit my career, I folded up my yoga business of 20 years and left, sold my house, put everything in storage, and I went on a 33-day odyssey across the United States in my car. And I have so much to share with you about that. And if I haven't put a link in the description, there is one in the channel description page of my Substack if you're interested in reading about my journey and the profound spiritual experience that it was. I'm also going to be talking about Native American geomancy in the coming weeks because that became a huge part of my trip. So I would love to know, put in the comments, what was your month of August? How did it land for you? Very curious about that. So coming into September, the rooster, so much fun. The rooster is a totally different thing. This is a totally different time that we are launching into. As we go into this, and actually the full moon in Pisces with an eclipse on the 7th of September is how we're entering into this time of the rooster. And the astrology for this, and I'm reading from the blog, so you can go, I'll have a link for you to go to the blog on the KHARMA Chameleon website, so you can read all of this, and I really sit and let it land for you how it will. But September is all about communication. That is what I think of when I think of the zodiac animal of the rooster. The element is yin metal. It's sparkly, it's shiny, it's glitter, it's the lights of the stage. It's the lighter in the concert, giving the sparks of light out into the blackness, otherwise blackness of an audience. It is about showcasing your talents, being seen, being heard. But the biggest piece is communication. Whether you're singing or screaming, whispering, or speaking your truth with confidence, how and when you choose to open your mouth will say everything about the outcome for you of September. And that being said, I will say this, of the last month of my trip, most of it was in silence and solitude. I can't tell you how many campgrounds I went to where it was off season. For whatever reason, I guess a lot of people's summers end in July, and I wound up with a lot of solitary time. Remember also that silence is a language in a very loud world, and tapping into that can be a different way of learning to communicate with yourself or with God and the universe and your guides and guardians and angels. That's a level of communication, especially with an eclipse season layered on top of this. Wow, what an opportunity if you are looking to step further into the 5D of the vibration and energy that we are being invited to walk deeper and deeper into, and more out of the 3D. I can tell you that my trip fully felt at times very 5D, communicating with animal spirits, communicating with sacred lands, communicating with the plants and trees. And when you begin to go into that level of communication, deep and profound and so awakening to the divine and to the expansiveness of, again, a different voice. Both that you're speaking silently and that you're also hearing. And all of this is vibration. Hope you're staying with me with this. So this is all September. And we're going to break it down in a few pieces here. I think I've got like 4 points to really highlight. But September, it could be loud. I can't handle loud anymore. I will say that. Cannot handle loud. I am far more comfortable in the quiet places where, again, what I'm listening to does not have language. And shout out to telepathy tapes. Holy Toledo. I listened to that podcast, first season, driving out through Tennessee, Arkansas, Oklahoma, to New Mexico, listen to the telepathy tapes, mind-blowing. Talk about a way to communicate. So that's another thing. The month of September with the eclipse is a huge opportunity to open yourself up to the concept of how am I communicating and what are the ways a person can communicate. So the day that we begin September is on the 8th, the day after the full moon in Pisces with the eclipse. It is going to be a massive start to a week. And most kids now will have been in school. And it is going to feel like a full thrust into this month because we're starting with a yang metal dragon for the first day of the start of September. That yang metal sitting on top of the dragon. And then the month itself, Yin Wood sitting on top of the rooster of yin metal, which is opposition, right? That yin metal is cutting the yin wood. And then we have the yin wood of the snake year. And what I wanted to touch base with you about that is this is point number 1 with all that I've already said. There is a feeling of isolation and that the Bazi here doesn't have a flow. You've got metal, earth, and yin metal, and those are in flow, right? Earth produces metal. So we've got that. But then we have wood and fire, and they work together. So you've got this almost like an L and an upside down L, right? But it doesn't flow. It feels disconnected. And with that block, the rooster is blocking that flow because the fire of the snake produces the earth of the dragon, but it can't get through because of that yin metal of the rooster. So that's something we look at within your own Bazi astrology. Is there flow? Because I can tell you, the relationships we struggle with the most can often be the ones that are isolated in our chart. We can't access them. So if you can't access the relationship, how can it become active? How can you connect? Yeah. So there's a division, and we can ask, where do we find division in our world and in our own lives? And in the United States, it used to be a polarity, red and blue, but it's not like that anymore. Have you noticed? It's not about politics. It's about protecting democracy. And in a way, oddly enough, sometimes in the worst situations, it actually pulls people more together. Again, regardless of politics. Pay attention. I'm telling you, this is happening. It has been happening slowly but surely all year. There is a unification happening as we gather as a mass, as a nation, to protect democracy. So the presence of fire, the yang fire of the snake next to that rooster, is big yang fire and little metal. And I've talked before about metal and fire shining money. It's purification. It's an alchemical interaction. This feels more like a firework, firecrackers, sparking things, like sparking electrical wires, wires like faulty wiring. And it's not big bombs. That would be yang metal. Yin metal is just far smaller of a spark, but it definitely is something to pay attention to. And the metal that is sitting on top of the dragon of that day, September 8th, look at what happens on that day as far as government and the military, and what kind of power is being wielded on that day. And this is collectively across our world, not just in the United States. Because the metal on top of the dragon feels militant, it feels dictatorial, it is, there's something protective and strategic about it, and it's about power and influence. That's the dragon. And the dragon can also be very innovative, very dreamy. Pisces, eclipse, full moon. So this could kind of almost be like the fantasy of power, an imagined power, an emperor with no clothes kind of power. Personally, without knowing your Bazi astrology, this day really says, how are you leading your life? Are you coming down with a heavy hand or a lead foot? How are you being overly aggressive? And why? You know, aggression is rooted in weakness. Aggression is rooted in fear of losing something. Often control. Control's an illusion. I can tell you that. When you start letting go of your life the way I have, let it all go, all of it. And then you're still asked to let go of more. That's this year of the snake, shedding the layers of what no longer serves your higher good, even if you thought it did. But this is a great job. Why did I lose it? What happened? Lean into the allowance of what's going on. Surrender. The more that we can actually relinquish this idea of having control and being curious to what we're being shown each day and what we have to learn is huge. And that's what I started my everyday. In 33 days, July 22nd until August 23rd, I was in 18 different places in 33 days. And every day I asked God, the universe, and my guides, what do you have to show me and what do I have to learn? And I'm going to continue this every day going forward. It makes each day a new opportunity. It humbles you to recognize again how much that idea of controlling the narrative harms us in the end, traps us in these lives that turn into a hamster wheel. So the 8th is especially, again, this is a Monday, and we will have just come out of a full moon eclipse. Be so gentle with yourself and others on this day. Because the way that you lead into this month and what you are saying. And again, all the ways of communication, written, verbal, text, email, all of it, and silent, telepathic, psychic, intuitive, all of these, prayer, all of this is communication. Meditation. Make that Monday as meditative as you can. Really and truly as meditative as you can. And you can do that and still be out in the world. If you ever are looking for tips on meditation and breath work, that is something that I will be bringing more and more onto the channel. And I'm very excited about that because I think weaving in practices that we can do to support the astrology that we're in creates a greater framework. Because for me, and maybe for you, astrology can sometimes feel very esoteric and very floaty, very Aquarius, very out there. And we need things that ground us down into our day. And for me, that is absolutely meditation and breath work. All right, let's get over to number 2. I've got so much to say. It's so good to be with you again. So number 2 is the rooster and the snake combine to form a semi-traditional metal trio, boosting that metal element, which I know for my astrology is great. And I do want to say that what trumps a conflict in your chart is when the elements that are at play for a month or a day are advantageous to your own personal Bazi astrology. For me, metal is a supportive element for my watery self. And we all are individually an element. One of the elements, fire, earth, metal, water, wood. So for me, that boost of metal is fabulous. And again, because the snake sits in my hour, it feels like a huge boost to my career because your hour is your career. It's also your children. And so this is an awesome time for me to be launching into making changes to the channel. And this is how we live our astrology and we work with it. So the metal being boosted, this is a force of a rooster month. This is Ariana Grande in full singing mode. It is you with a bullhorn walking the streets protesting. And it can also be a little bullhorn where you're speaking your truth, always from your heart, not from the ego. Very different energy. When we speak from our heart, that is a quieter bullhorn. And I can tell you more people listen sometimes when we speak gently, especially in our personal relationships. A protest is definitely yang. It definitely needs a bullhorn. It needs a big roaring crowd, right? But in our lives, it's the quieter bullhorn. And it's the one that comes from our heart. And it's spoken gently and with love. Yeah. And, you just open up your throat. Open up your throat chakra. How have you been muted? How have you been silenced? Do you clear your throat a lot? Do you have a chronic cough? Do you feel tightness in your throat? These are signs of a blocked throat chakra. And you can ask yourself, what is this? What is it that I have longed to say that I have not said? What is the truth in my story that needs to come out? And who are the people that need to hear it? And if they're not ready to hear it, or the outcome could be disastrous if I did speak it, where is a safe place for me to express myself? A journal, prayer, meditating, and speaking to my guides, God, and the universe. And one of the things I love to do, I went for a big 9-mile hike the other day on Red Top Mountain in Georgia. And at the end, I went inhale, exhale, throat wide open. Inhale, exhale. Such an amazing, opening, expansive feeling. Highly recommend it, especially if you can be barefoot on the earth. Connecting to that primal life force is so, what an energy. Oh, wow. The rooster is also fashion. I'm curious to see what happens in the fashion industry. It is very flashy. It is colorful. It's a bit of a show off. It can be arrogant. It's also displaying your brilliance, not in a cocky way, not in an ego way, but just a very self-confident way. How will you shine and stand on the stage of your own life in September? Number 3, the aftermath of last month has left us with a lot to talk about and discuss. What was revealed? What did we learn? For instance, Ghislaine Maxwell, of course she did. She just got moved to a lesser prison, low security prison. And of course they're going to release those transcripts because why? They exonerate all the people that are guilty. We know they are. So of course they're going to release that and say, oh yeah, she said there's nothing to see here. There's no list. Nobody's done anything wrong. No. Nothing to see here. Thank you, Ghislaine Maxwell. We'll put you in this low security prison, even though, you did trafficking and horrible, horrible, horrible things. Yeah. So, what was revealed and what did we learn? And sometimes what we learn is that the truth is not being talked about. And it's all just smoke and mirrors and distraction and noise. So if you thought that's what was last month with a lot of hijinks, it is just going to get louder. And with the eclipse season, probably more smoke and mirrors. And that way, we don't find the truth. We just find lots more things to go, whoa, what? Oh no, what? Just a lot more distractions. So, there's a feeling of being in the spotlight, losing our religion. That's what came to my mind. The rooster, again, is all about communication, what you say and how you say it. And the situation lends itself to confrontation, abuse of power, inflamed conversations, tongue-tied, fork-tongued, and all the rest. Watch your words. They're like birds. Open that mouth, out come the words, and just like a bird out of a cage, it's very hard to bring it back. In fact, it's impossible, no matter how many times you say you're sorry. Damage is done. So check yourself before you say anything. That is a fabulous muscle to exercise for yourself. Of thinking a thought, wanting to say something, and then checking yourself and going, wait a minute. That's unkind. That isn't productive. That isn't going to lead to a peaceful, harmonious outcome. And I need to go take a walk. So I'm going to excuse myself because that's the wise thing to do. Yeah. So don't be so arrogant and foolhardy to think you can rise above the situation with lofty words, boasting, big displays of ego without being slammed for it. This is an echo from last month when we started August on a day of the rooster. And this month we start with a day of the dragon, and it's going to be powerful and loud and a dramatic start to September. So looking at the flying stars feng shui, there are only 2 areas of our home that are vibrant with good energy. It is a crusher of a situation, so be mindful of noise, of chaos, of disturbing a beehive or stepping on a landmine, because they're everywhere in September. And one interesting caveat with this Bazi astrology is that the metal and the fire, again, could be good for investments, the stock market, and finances overall. Metal is money. The fire of the snake, polishing it, makes it shine. So will the Fed lower interest rates here in the United States? And what could that do for our lackluster economy and our frozen real estate market? And remember again, friends, this is a collective astrology, that we need to lay this over your own Bazi astrology to get a more personal insight. And I'm taking readings again. I'm very excited to be landing in my new home here in North Carolina. Would love to do your Bazi astrology for you and help you as we're navigating our way fully into autumn season now. And thank you so much for watching. I hope that this has been helpful. Stay tuned for our weekly updates, our daily updates, and for changes coming to the channel. I'm very excited to share all of this with you as it comes and reveals itself. So again, thank you and be well.